Well, thank you, Tim, and thank you for allowing the University of Pennsylvania to participate in what has become a very important and in a project, I think, for the entire world, pushing forward the commitments that everyone that's participating in this event shares deeply. I lead a project called One World Connected at the University of Pennsylvania, really designed to look at innovative ways to bring more people online. We know the basic facts. Roughly half of the people in the world do not have connectivity, and adoption rates in the developing world are slowing. And this is becoming a huge problem. There are many issues around this. We talked about, you just showed a great note on training, which is one aspect of this. We know the digital divide is worsening for gender and other aspects as it grows, which was mentioned in the other calls, and poverty. This is the guidance note we were privileged to work on is about connectivity itself, without taking it away from all the other important work that we contributed to as part of the core team. And the guidance note is available and is intended to be easily digestible, and so it has its bullet points. I would like to emphasize 3 points today. The first is many people, when they talk about connectivity, think just about availability first. Second is perhaps they sometimes get to affordability. What the COVID experience has really highlighted is the importance of quality as well. There are stories of people across the developing world, and including the developed world, where they discovered that people who had connections did not have enough bandwidth to participate in video, to submit assignments in a complete manner, and to transmit the multimedia environment that makes for the most effective learning. And there is a deep tension between affordability and quality, because building additional quality does cost more and does create different limits, and attention also with availability. And so dealing with making a realistic assessment of different modes for distribution, and to understand the trade-offs are going to be very, very difficult questions that governments and other supporters face in terms of trying to figure out how best to serve all of their populations. The second broader point I'd like to make is to make sure we take a broad notion of what connectivity means, which is what we discovered. I think one of the speakers earlier emphasized this, and I believe Michael in his introductory remarks emphasized that for places that do not currently have internet connectivity, we have to look at other means of communication that may be already established. So, for example, he mentioned for places where they have no internet connectivity whatsoever, broadcasting through television or radio may play an important role in continuing in making sure that children continue to receive education. And that's not to pretend that that sort of non-interactive, static, pre-scheduled time, synchronous but non-interactive mode of education is the best way to do so. But in areas where connectivity does not exist, we have to explore and develop plans to how to exploit the resources that do exist, or to leverage them in ways to make sure that what is already a disastrous situation for many learners doesn't get worse than it has to be. And so there are other areas in lower quality internet connectivity areas where you're going to have to think about intermediate solutions where you can reach them. But we have to think about, for example, asynchronous classes using storage or overnight transmission or local distribution, to think much more creatively. And then lastly is to really think about how to leverage the full connectivity. But again, to think broadly and think flexibly, because I think, as you put it so well once earlier, Tim, there is no one-size solution to this. And the third point, a broad point I would try to make is consistent with that idea, is many people are looking for a single magic technology to unlock all of the problems. And the reality is there isn't one. If there was one, we'd probably have figured this all out and be rolling it out all over. What we discover is urban areas and ex-urban areas and rural, and even what I would call hyper-rural areas are very different. The difference between a village in a rural area and the areas around it are very different. And what we'll discover is country contexts are very different, whether they're mountainous or they're islands, the level of development, the different barriers. And so in our survey and project, the empirical project we're leading to When We're Connected, we discovered there are a wide variety of technologies. Modal connectivity, satellites are coming in a way that are going to be very important. And I'm actually a satellite skeptic, haven't heard for years, multiple rounds of very bold predictions of how it's going to revolutionize things. But if you look at the technical capabilities of the current low Earth orbit satellites, they actually have much more potential than any others. TV white spaces is an experiment, but I will emphasize, in our experience, established off-the-shelf technologies have proven much more effective than the fancy drones and weather balloons and that capture so much of the public's imagination. But in addition, there are a number of very innovative alternative connectivity strategies, digital squares, portable Wi-Fi devices, community networks, public Wi-Fi hotspots, and cyber caravans, just to name a few. And so this is an example of how we need to think broadly and experimentally to improve how we're going to solve these problems that we've identified and that bring us here today. And we are just grateful to have be part of this project. And for Tim, as you recognize, none of this would be possible without the great work of Muge Haseki and Leon Glauca, the two postdocs at Penn who supported, did yeoman's work, and who actually took the laboring oar in making our contribution to this project a reality.